Okay, Chris. So we've got to break this down. Like, what the heck is the rise of humanists? We're talking about all this AI stuff. We're talking about where industries go on. All these major experts that we're having on the podcast. But define what the heck the rise of humanists is. I mean, you
Yeah.
and I were talking about this. So
Yeah. So this is really interesting. So
yeah,
two sides of it. So there's one side of it where we say AI enhances us or AI
right.
expands us,
Yeah,
AI evolves us, where we say you have to have critical judgment to be above AI to a certain 80% level, right?
yeah,
So say
yeah,
that. And
yep,
then that's true. So that's one part of the rise of humanists where you need to know enough about AI to understand how to surpass it or to have critical judgment where maybe it's not doing something right. And you know that, I guess people call it human in the loop. That's one aspect of it. But the
yeah. But let me break that down a little bit. What you're essentially saying there is, okay, everybody needs to know AI, number one, because, and that's going to be the equalizer, correct?
correct.
That- That's going to be the knowledge equalizer.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So let's talk about that then. That takes us to the next level, which is the really important level of the rise of humanists to jobs, to
Yeah.
your life, to your relationship, the new how you fit into society. Everybody's asking this question. Okay, let's say this. So let's say where we're at now. So if I said to you, Mike, if you could plug into a machine
Yeah.
that would increase your IQ by 100 points, would you do it?
Yeah. I would consult the machine. I don't know that I would plug into a machine, but I would consult a machine.
Well, so that's where we're at now.
Right.
So right now, AI, 180, 160, 200, it's all up to debate.
Yeah.
And the new reasoning models are getting us up to increasing our IQ by 100 points. And you go, yeah, I'd like to do that. Now, but here's the next step. Remember, every 5.9 months, AI, because of the exponential curve, doubles. So in 5.9 months, we're going to go from, let's say, 160 to 200 to maybe 200 next year, 200 IQ. Let's be
It's just
conservative.
mind blowing.
Let's
Right.
say next year,
Yeah.
next 5.9 months, it doubles. Remember, it doesn't
Yeah.
just, it's exponential,
Yeah.
2, 4, 6, 8.
Yeah.
It could go to 400. Let's say by 2027, let's be conservative. It's at 800,
Yeah. Yeah.
1600 by really conservative, let's say by 2030. Now, the next question is, if you're just dabbling with AI and it's got an IQ of 400, what about your competition? Your competitors, your human competitors
Yeah.
really know about AI. So
Yeah.
they're plugging into a machine that increases their IQ by 300 points. And you don't know how to do that. You're at a disadvantage, right?
Well, I think you're out of business at that point.
And that's business too.
Yeah.
So now we get to a point where you're in the room and AI has an IQ of 1,000 times smarter than people. So the smartest person in the room is AI. And if you
Yeah.
don't,
So now people are not paid for their knowledge. They're going to be paid for their expertise or their ability to relate to others. Right. The
now
relation.
that takes us to the rights of humanists. So what are
Yeah.
people going to be paid for?
Yeah.
What are people going to be appreciated for? Or really, what's the next stage? Let's say it's human 2.0.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
how do we have to expand? How do we have to evolve? How do we have to, uh, what's the next evolution of humanity, so to speak?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Why do we call it the rise of humanists? Because what we're going to be looking for in the future are what we call premier human beings. What does that mean? It means a human being that doesn't have a closed mindset, a human being that's not negative, that's more positive, a human being that's not reactionary, it's more responsive, like our VUCA MAX line,
Yeah.
victim that understands how to be a creator, it doesn't feel that they're powerless. It feels that they're powerful in this era that is not um, constrained by what we call our evolutionary subconscious. Our
Like
negative,
our biases
our
is
negativity
yeah,
bias.
our negativity
So
biases.
we're biased, or we also have a fear bias to the future. So this is a new idea. How do we take uncertainty and say uncertainty and a fragile, we
Right.
embrace it with strength, it makes us more powerful. These are radical ideas.
I mean, we're talking about flipping the script of humanity at that point because what does Mark Devine say? He says the brain is wired 5 times more negative.
Right.
Right? So we look through a lens, a perspective of a negative lens, and what you're saying, what the data's saying, what we're seeing is in order to even compete or s- survive and thrive, is you're going to have to flip that script and be extremely open-minded. You're going to have to be adaptable. You're going to have to seek clarity. You're going to have to be curious. This is all the stuff you're talking about, which is that's a radical shift, Chris. Like, how do people get there? Like, how are they
Well,
going to?
that's why we built the VUCA MAX plan because
Yeah.
everything that we did, we learned from the military,
Right.
which based on VUCA, which
Yeah.
is about when the military encountered technology, they call it volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Right.
And
Right.
there was a positive side of that, which is how do you counter that? With vision, understanding, clarity, and adaptability, which as we know,
Yeah.
the big A, and agility and adaptability go together.
Right.
So so we looked at this and with all kinds of the greatest thought leaders in the world, uh, from military generals to uh, futurists to best-selling authors to neuroscientists to psychologists to philosophers, and really looked at what is that human 2.0? Because here's the big distinction. Everybody thinks that it's AI versus machines. I mean, it's machines versus humans or AI
Yeah.
versus humans. It's actually humans versus humans because the machines are going to do what they're going to do. It's the genie's out of the bottle.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
AGI is coming. It's going to be uh, in probably 10 years, a million times. I know this is going to sound incomprehensible, a million times smarter than humans.
Well, that's you're talking about the super intelligence piece, which means that if the
No,
super
super intelligence
intelligence,
even more. you know,
right? Yeah, but so super intelligence and generative AI, all this stuff. That's okay. That's a given, which now requires every human to reflect back on who the heck am I? What does it mean to have my last name? What does it mean for me to seek clarity, to be a proactive, right? To be proactive as opposed to reactive, because I think what you're talking about and what we're seeing is people being super reactive, right? Like if fear based,
oh, but see, that's the bad part. So everything we're
right?
talking about where people are now, where they're paralyzed,
Yeah,
they're feeling uncertain,
yeah.
they're full of anxiety, huge fear of the future, as we know,
Well, I mean, mental
all of
health
that,
issues are off the charts. Yeah,
and well-being.
yeah,
All of that is stuff that we have to resolve to go forward in the future because in the future, there's only going to be more of this, more uncertainty, more unpredictability, more mind-blowing stuff that's happening. So you actually have to become a different person where you start to, as we always talk about, Mike, expand who you are as a person,
yeah.
to elevate who you are, actually shift to a new movie. The human race has to shift to an entirely new movie about how we operate because here's what it's about. Let's go to the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about, let's say you're talking about customer service, we know the bots are going to replace a lot of customer service.
Right. Yep.
But what's happening? The reverse is actually happening. If you've ever used the bots now with customer service, you go right away, I'd like to speak to a human being.
Totally. I do that all the time. I'm hitting 0. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's not
So
an
now
option.
we're tired of the bots and we're saying I
Yeah.
want to speak to a human being or customer service person. Or let's say you go into a hotel and you want to talk to somebody at the front desk. What the people that are the humans that are going to get those jobs are going to be those premier people, the people that don't react, that have a leadership quality to them, that have a ability to collaborate real well, right? In the AI age, who
Yeah.
have who have a personality that is magnetic, that's not judgmental, not controlling, um, feels like they're there to serve you, right? They have empathy. I know these are all words that we hear now, we play with kind of like, "Oh, you've gotta have empathy and creativity
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
innovation in the future," but you really do, and to get there, there's ways that you can learn skills to have exponential empathy as they do, I mean, we know that, right? I mean, and there's skills that you can have more well-being for yourself.
Well, it requires people to really reflect on who they are, and if
Correct.
they it I think it comes down to, Jocko's said this for years, discipline. There's freedom in discipline. And people are gonna have to be disciplined to the point I think some of our experts have talked about the people are ignorant and avoiding what is going on in the marketplace right now and what's going on in society. They're like, "Yeah, yeah, I see it, but I really don't wanna pay attention, doesn't affect me,
Well, that's
doesn't affect me,"
sleepwalking. That
right?
doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, they're sleepwalking. So, I mean, if we got practical and tactical on this, it's really like you gotta get up, like, maybe 15 minutes early and spend some time on what does it mean to be me, number 1, and how do I take those difficult situations and not be reactive? Remember, we would have the 60-second lifesaver thing that we talked about, right?
Yeah.
Where you gotta breathe through it. I think it's really gonna be I love what David Guillaume says, where he talks about, the pause. Like, I
Yeah.
think there's gonna be such
Well, no, but that's the, Bring It On tool.
oh, it's totally the bring it
It's
on
60
tool.
we have a tool in VUCA
Yeah,
MAX where we take you and you've got change is painful. Sometimes doing something that's outside of your comfort zone is painful, but you go through it and you do the 60-second pause, as we
yeah,
talk about. That takes you then to the next level where you get into really your higher forces, where you find you go, "Oh, I can do this. I could do this. I could do public speaking, right? I can
yeah,
do public speaking."
yeah,
And but you have to challenge yourself to do that. Once again, being anti-fragile, not fragile. And you go, "I'm going to do this because I know in uncertainty and in unpredictability, the only way, which is the hero's journey,
yeah, yeah,
the
that's
only
right.
way Luke Skywalker becomes a Jedi Knight is to go through the obstacle."
Well, and people are gonna have to do that. They're gonna have to realize, like, you can't avoid it anymore
No.
because what the Harvard study came out and said, "Hey, listen, the shelf life or the half life of every major job in the world, certainly in the country, is less than 5 years." And I think some are arguing that, like, listen, the shelf life of every job is probably less than 2 years. To be honest with you, like you're going to get into a job and you're going to have to adapt quickly. And if you're complaining that, hey, this is not my job, that's what I love about the military. When I was in the service, that was not a word that we said. Like I don't ever
Right.
remember
Yeah.
saying, "That's not my job." It was like, "I'll figure it out." Right?
Yeah.
So, that is the mentality that I think we're gonna have to go back and revert to being pioneers, I think in many ways. Uh,
Well, we're going to have to go back to, well, it's actually what we've just been talking about.
yeah,
Let's say we had human 1.0 when we were Neanderthals or Cro-Magnon. Then we got the prefrontal cortex during, I think, the Ice Age, because we had to figure stuff out, like you said. And we got human 2.0, where
yeah,
we became more intelligent. Now we're in an era where we're going to have to become human 3.0 because we're being challenged by this new alien intelligence.
yeah,
Is really informing. I mean, I've used it to write on stuff. We write screenplays,
yeah,
right? We do films. So in a way, you're using AI to, let's say, write a scene, research for you. You're pushing it to do this, or you know, push the conflict, or push the drama, or push the obstacles. You're learning from it. And here's the interesting thing. Remember, we had Gerd on today who talked about
yeah,
Marshall McLuhan, where we create the tools and the tools create us. The dynamics that's going to be happening with these things that raise your IQ 100 points is that you're learning from it and it's learning from you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Which
this, it's a total coexistence.
coexistence.
Yeah. I think that's the power of what's going on with VUCA Max. I mean, VUCA is the environment that we all live in now, right? I
Right.
mean, I think it's interesting that when you and I produced that film, I remember that conversation where we're like, "Oh, the pandemic's gonna be over." And then, I think we just built a film that was based on a time capsule. People look back, with nostalgia. And now we look back and we go, that film is even more relevant today than I think it was in 2020, 2021 when it came
100%.
out. It's now more relevant because people are actually going, what is this environment where everything is changing so massively and it's accelerating and it's exponential and we're like, yes, it is, and everything that comes out, whether it's a new EO or whether it's something that the leaders, elected leaders make decisions, and people are like, "This just, I just walked into my job that I thought was secure, and now that blew up in my face. Now what?" And they have got to understand that first of all, they have to be aware of what's going on, right? They've got to be aware of what's going on there. So you got to move out of unconscious state into conscious state. You've got to acknowledge what's going on. Yep, this is hitting me in the face, right? And then
Yeah.
that whole pause, what a pleasure thing. Pause. Okay, I'm going to either be reactive or proactive in this. And now I'm going to put an action plan together. And that action plan, I believe, Chris, you and I spend a lot of time on these tools. And the reason we did is not because we wanted to, the tools are like the tools are transformational, but
Yeah.
you've got to do the work. It's like going to a gym. There's a bunch of weights around. If you never use it,
Well,
you're not,
that's a good analogy for AI because
yeah,
AI is like weights, but if you're not using it, you're not getting the strength from it. So the AI is one thing with perfect analogy to bring up COVID because when we did the film, which was about how fast the world can change and how it blows your mind.
yeah,
And you find yourself unable to cope or
yeah,
unable to know what to do. So when we did the film and everybody asked us, well, that's great. What do I do about this? And then
yeah,
we spent 3 years on this or 4 years on it, building in actual tools. So we talk about AI being tools, tools for
yeah.
AI.
That's right.
What we've done is we give you, as we said, those human 2.0 tools are what we, because of COVID, because AI is a similar, it's a similar
Well, it's an event.
era
Right.
because it's like
Yeah.
as it has that kind of disruption to it. It's like everything changes.
Yep.
How do I keep up? What do I do? So the tools that were built for COVID, and people have compared the AI era to COVID in its ability to make you go, just shake you up, like you
Yeah.
just don't know what's going on. So the tools that we built for that are the types of tools that you need to survive, not to survive, it's the wrong word. It's the tools that you need to expand who you are. This is really the key. If you think you're a person right now that has this kind of small, limited, I've had this job, as we've talked about, as a robot.
Yeah.
It's 5 years. It's
Yeah.
mundane. I don't know about this era. I'm not sure about, I feel kind of limited. I have a closed mindset. Um, I'm fearful. I'm I don't trust myself that much to be able to survive. I don't trust the government. I don't trust this, all of that kind of stuff, Mike, and the stuff that you deal with. I'm not sure my identity now. I don't
Yeah.
know if I have purpose. I don't really know what if there's meaning in the world. I'm not really sure. All of these things are the foundational elements that we've built into VUCA Max for one reason, because a big part of it's built on elite military mentality,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
where what you know, whether you're a Navy SEAL or you're a Green Beret or these other elite forces. they have a special elevated mindset about mission and service and their identity and collaboration with their teams.
Well, I think that's the important part is people are gonna have to figure out how to collaborate. They're gonna have to elevate their mindset. They're gonna have to I love what you said about the tool not just the tools. The tools are important, but you've gotta have that element of trust, right? The discernment, you've gotta be able to break that
With
down.
yourself and with with actually with the future. You've got to trust that in people. I know it's hard to do, but it does get us back to Star Wars.
Well, it goes yeah, let me build on that because
You
it's
have to have trust in in that. You have to have hope. You have to have trust. You have to
well, you
have
do. You've gotta have but I think that stems from self, which is
correct. Yeah,
trust
starts
and
there.
certainty. Certainly, like for me, trust and certainty in a higher power, right? I think that's so, the world could fall apart and I still have trust and certainty in a higher power. But that also goes into like when you talk about the elite military forces or even anybody that served in the military, this ability to know, you know what, I'm trained for this. So it's having that understanding that no matter what happens, I'm going to have to be adaptable because the environment's going to change. It's probably going to change quickly. And I trust myself enough to know that no matter what happens, okay, I think the disconnect happens when people are so fixed on outcome as opposed to how do I navigate this event, right?
Yeah, well, you know what? Because that's a good. In fact, Mo Out wrote a book on this called Happiness. And one of the things we're going to have to do with this human 3.0 is redefine happiness. Because
Yeah.
happiness comes from purpose and it also comes from expectation. Like if you thought, well, my happiness came from I did this job and I did that, whatever that is, and that's a redefinition of what what makes you happy. Is it working like a robot? I did 5 days a week as a robot, you know,
Yeah.
and I met my expectations for doing that. Or is it that now I'm much more human with people, with my community, with
Yeah, that takes
family?
work. People
Yeah,
are they're gonna have to retrain their brains.
different
It's
mindset.
yeah, it's I would argue that if you are basing your happiness on what you are doing, that's a performance-based happiness, and that shifts, you are gonna go back to what we struggle with in the military, which is when you leave the military, all of a sudden your identity shifts, your identity changes, your mission changes, your purpose changes, and now what do you do? Who are you? Who are you? Why are you here? And why does it matter? And if you tie it all to a job or a project, uh, I'm not saying you can't derive happiness from that, but it's happiness has got to be internal. I'd
Yeah,
argue that happiness is certainly based on an event, but joy comes internal. Happiness, the events can contribute to your happiness, but if that's where all your happiness lies, you're screwed. I think you're screwed.
yeah. It's a shift in accomplishments because you're saying the accomplishment becomes it's self leadership,
yeah,
really, and my accomplishment came from mentoring, or my accomplishment came from giving back to the community versus, I got out, X amount of widgets this week, you know, my job.
yeah,
And that shift is going to have to, like you said, it's a self shift, or it's also how am I improving as a human being
yeah,
is,
yeah,
is huge from like, oh, I really like myself because I have, um, you know, whether I don't judge people or I don't control, and then people like me, whatever that. It's not about being liked by people. That's the wrong way of saying it. It's that um, I think what makes you magnetic and people want to hire you is that you have those human soft skills. You know, being
yeah,
better communicating, being better collaborating,
which is actually hard skills because it's really hard to develop those sometimes for
Well,
some people.
that's the other thing. So
Yeah.
even with their VUCA MAX program, you know, it is step by step.
Yeah.
It is not like, hey, you get it right away. I mean, it's a 10-week program and we get you up and running so that you feel like you've shifted your movie. You've
Yeah.
shifted your story. This is
Yeah.
what's really important. You can be stuck in an old story where you're complaining a lot, you're blaming a lot. We call it below the VUCA MAX line, and you're negative a lot. And you're in that volatility, that uncertainty, the complexity, the ambiguity. You're kind of like confused a lot.
Yeah.
You're paralyzed a lot. And we need to get you up into from that dwelling in the past of who you are, sometimes that 95% of who you are
Yeah.
subconsciously, past behaviors, past old stories, past limiting beliefs, um, all of that stuff that holds you back into vision. You have a vision for the future, understanding of who you are,
Yeah.
understanding of who people are, understanding of what it takes to elevate yourself, on your journey in life is your hero's
Yeah.
journey. And then you get clarity, as you said. All of a sudden, the confusion clears up, the complexity clears up, and then you become more adaptable, become more flexible. And then, as an employee, people just see it. They
Well,
go,
they see it, but you also feel it. You
"You
know
feel,
that I can adapt to this. This is okay. The
yeah,
environment changing and I can shift and change with it. That's good.
yeah." So you're with proper human tools,
Yeah.
you're shifting up. And then as you deal with AI, you plug into the 5,000% more IQ. What you're probably not going to realize is that your other intelligences that we've talked about, your 10 human intelligences outside of AI or other reasoning intelligences, are amplified. Those are elevated, those are expanded, those are evolved. And so all of a sudden, that's the rise of humanism.
Yeah, that's a great way. That's a great way to finish this off too, Chris. You and I
Yeah.
could talk about this. I mean, this is, for those who, made it all the way through this video, we got so many great guests that come on our show. And I truly believe it's important for people not only to consume information, but to apply that information that they're getting, right? Some of the tips, the tools, the information, the education, really evaluating how to understand that, how to apply it to their own life
Yeah.
and understand how it applies to their life and how they're going to need to make these shifts and changes. And we've got so many great resources, tools, articles, videos. It's VUCAMax.com where people can access this stuff.
Yeah,
They can
DM us or
subscribe.
put it in this into the chat below if you
Yeah.
know more. I think one of the thing I do want to end on is that Peter Diamandis talks about this. I guess he and we know Stephen Collar, who's in our last documentary, um, are writing a book on a lot of this. Not quite exactly like our Rise of Humanists, but they're talking about how we need to shift ambition.
Mm,
So the ambition will not be in this chasing robotic jobs. The ambition will be working on ourselves to be more like Captain Kirk,
I
you know,
love it. Yeah,
how
love
to
that.
be more elevated.
Yep.
And yeah, we have the ship's computer, but we've worked on ourselves to be these kind of, as I said, unique ship's captains, so to speak. You know,
Well, yeah, we are the captain of our own ship.
yeah,
So that part is true. It's so good, Chris.
great.
Yep.
More of this to come.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.